Hello again. And I just had an urge to tell you about my interesting evening I had. I was invited to dinner at a friend's house. And when I came, she said, "Hello, how are you?" And I had an interesting guest while waiting for you. And it has something to do with you. And I said, "Well, who is it?" And she says, "Well," she was sitting on her balcony and she felt like Yeshua, Jesus, was sitting in the chair across from her. And she just thought she wanted me to channel what was it about? And I thought, well, I wasn't really in the mood, but I could see she was really excited about it. So I said, well, maybe a little later. And we got to talking about this and that and having our dinner and watching a little bit of Pam Gregory, who is an amazing astrologer. Highly recommend her. And, the mood was nice and I was relaxed. And all of a sudden, there's this question that comes to me like, who was Jesus's little brother? Did he have a little brother? So we looked it up, and it was kind of a really nice surprise because it said he had a younger brother named James. Now, I've always been attracted to that name. I just really wanted to have one of my children named James, but that didn't come about. But I remembered a little boy that would wait for me outside of his house in the morning. And I went to school, third grade, and I would walk either with my brother or by myself. But I would always stop and talk to him. And he would tell me a joke almost every morning and just lift my spirits every single morning when I went to school. I was not a big fan of school. I loved recess, music, art, and yeah, music, but gym class. But all the other stuff was not a big fan. I did okay though. So while I went to this school, this was in Cleveland, Ohio, and there was this tragedy where a house burnt down and there were 6 children and the father that had perished. And one of them was my friend James. And he's always been in my heart, and I think of him every once in a while. And I just know he's doing fine on the other side. So then I was thinking, well, why would I think of him? And it's because this person, James, had sort of a connection with this Christ energy. He was actually one of my angels in my life that would just make me feel better. And then when I transferred to another school, who should greet me and walk me home sometimes? Another James. And his hair was black and curly, and he resembled actually a little bit the first one I had met. And I just thought that was a lovely connection. And then while we were talking about this, I remembered that I gave a hitchhiker a ride. When I first got my car, I had a Dodge, whatever. It was a convertible, but it had a push button transmission. And I loved that little car. And it was at the time where gas didn't cost very much. And this young man was hitchhiking. And back then, I just thought, well, I'd like to help the guy. And he said, "Can you take me to the airport?" And I said, "I'd love to, but I don't have enough gas on to do that, you know. And he gave me $2, and I think I had $2. And I put gas on the car and I drove him to the airport. It was his last $2 and my last $2. But when I think about it, didn't he say his name was James? And what I got the vibe from him was like he had this Christ like energy about him. And then I start putting together other scenarios where I thought, oh, yeah, I met this guy in the park and his name was James. So I just have this sort of connection to, I don't know if it's Yeshua, Jesus, or his little brother James, but I feel like every now and then when I really needed it, a person named James would come into my life. And I just thought that was rather magical. And the evening turned into like a spiritual talk, as it always does when we're together, myself and Polly. And, you know, we get a lot of things down, and I was told I was not going to be channeling anymore that evening. So we just relaxed and enjoyed ourselves and got some messages anyway. And one of them is there's going to be a lot of intense energies. And if you can, relax as much as possible. Don't go into, there's going to be things in retrograde, and, so don't go into the fighting, and try to stay as positive as possible and create, create, create. This is the time to create, to do your artwork, to do your music, to do your walks in the park or your gardening. Just try to breathe easy, and things like Qigong and other forms of gentle exercise is going to be really good the next few weeks. And things will get better, but this is going to be a year where we're going to need each other. We are each other's angels. We're going to need each other. We're going to support each other. And a few days ago, I had this need to call a friend that I haven't heard from for a while. And I could tell, or I could feel, you can, what's going on with your friends sometimes, even though you don't talk to them. And she was going through a very rough patch. And I said, come on over, let's make some tea and have a chat, So what happened was her ex-husband, who she was still very connected with, had just passed away. And I know about that. I know I've had several times where I was with someone who had passed away, and yeah, it's a very special time. And I also know that when my own son passed away, and he was very ill, he was handicapped, he was quite severely handicapped, and I was telling her about how it was for me when someone you love dearly passes away, how everything's like in a haze and you get through it, but then sometimes a little sign, a signal, a message will come through. And for me, it was, in this country, there's a little bird. It sort of looks like a miniature robin. And there's a story to it. And it has it said it has the blood of Christ on its chest. Now, my son's name was Christian. So on the day of his funeral, I looked out the window and it was cold. And there was this little bird out there, the mini robin. And I just felt like it was looking at me. And every time I went to another window and another window, it would be right outside the window where I was. Always. And this continued for 2 weeks. And then within those 2 weeks, someone told me, do you realize sometimes the people that have passed on, they'll send you a little sign, or, just to say they're okay and they're still with you. And then I realized that this was a message from my son. And I just told her about this story, and another woman had, her sister had passed on, and there's a big yellow butterfly. And every now and again, this yellow butterfly would come and remind her, hey, I'm still here. I'm still around. And then my friend said, well, she had it with the dragonfly. She was sitting somewhere and a dragonfly all of a sudden out of the blue came, and this was happening to her several times. So she thought, oh, this is, from my ex-husband. He was very dear to her and very much in her heart. And it made her feel better, where maybe a lot of other things cannot, because your surrounding family is also grieving. And I know a lot about grieving, and I find that for me, I've held it back until I really had time to let go. For example, my daughter had a premature twins, and they were not very big, um, 900 grams, which is not a large child. And the little girl didn't make it. And that triggered something in me, like my own loss that I was finally allowed to let go of. So I did cry for the little girl that I lost that dream of having a granddaughter at that moment when she passed on. And, but I cried also because I had held back so long to be strong for everybody else that I just let myself melt down. And that's a good thing to do. When the time is right, let go. And remember, they are around you. They'll give you a sign. You can hear lots of little kids say, "Hey, grandma visited me last night." And then the next day they hear that the grandmother had passed on or something like that. My mother watched or helped take care of a man. She worked as a hospice aide. And when I was visiting in Florida, she took me with her. And I got to know Mac. And Mac had been an executive in a big oil company. And he was just the gentlest soul. He was just so gentle. Beautiful, beautiful man. And he was living with his partner. They were a gay couple. And David was also a very sweet man. And I won't say I had a good time, but I had a very compassionate time. And one day I was alone with Mac, and he was in his bed, and I was, looking at the shelves, and he had a book about going to the light or something like that, passing on. And I said, "Oh, did you read that book? I read that book a few years back." And he said he had never read it. So I was telling him about it, and I was telling him about how it was like to, cross over, and basically telling him not to worry so much, and just to have that talk. And later, when I was in the living room, David told me, "You know what? No one has talked to him about his passing." And I thought, oh, so that's why I was there. And it was a pleasure and an honor. And several months after I came back to Denmark, about 2:20 in the evening, or the night, the morning, whatever, I was sleeping, and I heard my horses out in the field, and I've never heard them like whinny or neigh like that before. It was very, very loud, and it woke me up, because usually that wouldn't wake me up, because they're out there, they're making noises if they want. And I woke up and I looked at the clock and I thought, what is going on? And I opened the door and they were fine. There was nothing to frighten them or anything. So the next day, my mother calls me and says, Mac passed away. And I said, oh, what time? What it turned out to be was the exact time that the horses woke me up. The one thing about Mac and we both loved horses. So I knew it was him giving me, hi, I've been around to visit you. So anyways, we do not stop living, even though our bodies are finished here. We do go on. And I just find that very comforting. And maybe in the next time, that in this day and age, there's a lot going on. I'm sending a lot of prayers and blessings to the people that are in turmoil. At the same time, I'm trying to really relax, be as happy as possible, try to keep on the positive timeline, raising the energy. So I hope that helped a little bit, and I will end off with, what did I do with it? There it is. I picked another card, and it's called The Inner Garden, which reminds me that, I have to do some gardening tomorrow, but that's not what this is about. The Inner Garden. Oh, I love these glasses. They only have one of the Okay, I take the time to be with myself and rediscover my inner garden. It is a beautiful place, an infinite space of serenity where I can go to reconnect with God. This is where I find my true source of peace, my divine light. I become calm and hold myself to the essence of being. I see how truly wonderful I am. And remember that. You guys are awesome. And you are deeply loved. And I will now say good night.